opinion is to make the public aware of how important the judicial races are. Whether it's a district judge, whether it's an appellate judge, it's all connected. To give you some background and some ideas about how deep we are in and overrun with crime, is that currently Harris County is let down about between 3,500 to 4,000 people every month on free bail. And that's felony and misdemeanors. So let's be clear about that. You get told it's misdemeanors, it's this, it's that, it's non-violent offenders. It is not. Right here I'm holding in my hand 1 month's worth from June to July 1st, 3,880. And these are not blank pages. So every name, every defendant is in here. So that's important to remember. We don't know how many are repeat offenders. We don't know, how many have had cases dismissed. ABC 13 just did a news story 2 days ago saying that Harris County has dismissed 60% of their cases each year for 5 years. Now let that sink in. 60% dismissals. And yet crime is not going down. So what does that mean? Reoffense rates are up. High. So I'm giving you some background information to understand. We've had some legislation come down from this last session dealing with bail. You all have heard of that, correct? Holding defendants without bond, having their hearings, that kind of thing. I expect that because Zach in his position, and being that he has a background with the DA's office, it's very important that you elect somebody that can hit the ground running. Not, I was a civil attorney and I'm going to learn the criminal side. This is happening too fast, too much. You need somebody that can already hit the ground running and know what they're going to be ruling on and follow the law. I don't think that's, look, let's be clear about crime. Crime is a nonpartisan issue to me. I want everybody to be safe. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, I want everybody to go home. I don't want people to have their cars broken into. I don't want people to be robbed. Domestic violence is another issue that's not being addressed, which is why you're seeing a lot of domestic homicides among couples. Because a lot of assaults are being dismissed. Those dismissals, those mass dismissals, that's what's happening. So, getting someone like Zach at the appellate court, he's going to be dealing with these bond issues because of this new legislation that it's going to have to mend itself out as it goes. The DAs will be allowed to appeal bail. They don't like bail. They don't agree with the number. However, I'll leave that to the professionals. I am a bail bondsman. I've dealt with criminals the last 20 years. I said, and I saw the uptick. We were the first ones to deal with the defendant when they got out of jail, which meant that the bondman was kind of in an unusual place to have an impact. Make them check in, make them, have a curfew if you want. If the judge wanted to call the bondsman because they had a problem with the defendant, we could call that defendant up and have him in court. Say, hey, judge wants to see you. I don't know what's going on. So there were all these little layers of people that were involved in that process. And like I said, Zachary, I've gotten to know him. I believe in integrity. That's a word that's used a lot. But I know candidates tell you that. Integrity, honesty, hard work. Well, what we're seeing lately down there, except for the Republican side judges like Lori D'Angelo, Emily Toto, they're moving their dockets. But the other ones, as you can see, slow dockets. It's a backlog. And when you have backlogs like that, you don't get any justice. In fact, mass dismissals, can you imagine being a victim of a crime and your case was dismissed for lack of evidence or insufficient evidence or whatever they're putting on these dismissals now? That affects you. Cops are overrun, they can't respond, it takes hours to get to you. So we're in a big mess. But again, I speak on behalf of Zachary. I believe he's a good candidate. I've gotten to know him long enough. Being a bondsman, we read BS pretty good. So I can tell you, if I read that, I wouldn't be here speaking on his behalf to say that he's your candidate to sit on the First Court of Appeals, place 3. With that, thank you for hearing me. Go Zach.
As Zach said, my name is Rolando Garcia. I'm a state Republican executive committee man, but most importantly, I'm just a conservative grassroots activist in the trenches. And I want to start by, Zach mentioned that we met block walking. Let me tell you a story from that day. This was in the fall of 2022. Zach was running for a county criminal court. And this was a block walk organized by the Harris County Republican Party. They paired one volunteer with a judicial candidate, and we went out block walking. And this was in West U. And as many of you know, that's not always friendly territory for Republicans. And sure enough, we came to a door, and there was this angry woman shrieking at us about Greg Abbott and abortion and all that. But Zach handled it very well. He very calmly and very winsomely shifted and redirected the conversation to crime and public safety and the role that judges have in our everyday lives. I don't know if we went over that voter, but I was very impressed with Zach that day. It showed me that he is able and willing to communicate to regular voters and to do the work to reach out to them. You know, as grassroots activists, I look for 2 things in a candidate that I support. One, they have to have strong conservative principles, and they have to be qualified. And Zach obviously does that. And they have to be able to communicate to regular voters. And I've seen firsthand how Zach can do that. Now, I do want to address that, as I think many of you know, this is a crowded primary. There's 3 other candidates in the race. One of them I never heard of, so I won't even address her. And there's 2 other gentlemen, and they're good guys, I know them. Good guys. They specialize in family law and in business law. And I don't want to demean those things. Those are very important. But let's be honest. Why do people in Harris County vote for Republican judges? Why does our countywide judicial ticket run 5 to 6 points ahead of the top of the ticket? Because crime and public safety are the top issues for voters in Harris County. Okay? It affects not just Republicans, crime affects everyone, right? And we need someone who can make the case, not just to Republicans, but to win in November. We need to make that case to independents, to moderates, to, there's even a few moderate Democrats up there. Not a lot, but there's a few. And I'm sure they're fed up with the crime in Harris County. And Zach is best positioned to do that because he's been in the trenches as a career prosecutor. He's been trying to keep the bad guys in jail, and he knows firsthand how soft on crime Democrat judges are putting our lives in danger. So I feel really good about Zach as a candidate, as a conservative, and as the next justice on the First Court of Appeals. So I'm supporting him not just because he's my friend and he's a good guy, although he definitely is. He is the best qualified, and he will make us proud on the Court of Appeals. So with that, I'll hand it back to Zach.
I don't want to stack the PR bonds up here. It's bad luck. By the way, before I get going, I forgot one candidate. J.J. Clements is here. She's also a candidate for Fort Bend County Clerk. There she is, right there. There she is. Yes. Okay. Well, now I'm up here as a candidate. Before I've been up here as the MC, the event coordinator, the campaign manager for this campaign. I wear many, many hats. And I thank you all for coming. Good evening. I'm Zach Gibson, and I am the best qualified person to be your next justice on the First Court of Appeals, place number 3. And I need your help. In March and again in June, we will have the honor of something that many countries do not have. We will get to select the people that serve us in public office. That is something many people never get, and we take it for granted. We are a great people, and we are a great country. Here, we are neither, white, black, Arab, Indian, Vietnamese, Honduran. We are neither Jew nor Gentile. And we are not united by race, religion, or blood, or tribe. We are united by our belief in this country. And our loyalty to its principles, and we are one people, the American people. And this country is not perfect, but it is always striven towards equality and more perfect union. We have put a man on the moon, we have freed the country from the world, from tyranny, and we have stood up for the best in all of us. Getting to be on the ballot in this country is itself a privilege. And getting to be your nominee in November would be the honor of my life. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I am from a very small town in Deep East Texas called Golden. We're famous for 2 things, sweet potatoes and Casey Musgrave. I'm a graduate of Baylor University, class of 2011, fellow Bears in here.
Sicko.
I went to St. Mary's Law School in San Antonio. And in 2012, I got out. I was in their criminal clinic, and I was the top student in their criminal clinic. I got an award from the clinic for my work. And after a short stint doing civil work for a while, let me just digress for a second. In criminal, we handle people going to prison for life, and they usually were pretty nice to each other. In civil, lawyers call you and yell at you, and you look down, it's a $2,000 lawsuit. So it just shows you that civil is not always civil. And I did it for a while. I did regulatory work for JP Chase. But in March of 2015, I found my calling. I put my hand on the Bible, and I was sworn in as a prosecutor at the Bexar County DA's office. And it's a decision I've never regretted. Then in July of 2016, I was given the honor of joining the Harris County District Attorney's Office. And it's an amazing place to work. It still is. I was a little overawed when I first got here because since it is such a very competitive place to get into, I remember my first day as a misdemeanor 3, there was a lady down the hall from me who graduated from Harvard, and I was around very good attorneys, and I thought, maybe there's another Zach Gibson out there, and our applications got crossed and made a mistake. I'm just not going to say anything. But after a while, I was known as the guy you would ask questions of. People would call me or text me from other courts and say, what's the answer? And I would know it. I did a little appellate work in the Bexar County DA's office too. And sometimes over the last decade of being a prosecutor, it has been tough. I remember in the era of 2020, we had riots. The language used about prosecutors in this country and law enforcement generally was not always favorable. And I toyed with leaving, but the verse that always came to mind was, the wicked flee when none pursue them, but the righteous are as bold as the lion. You should always stay, and you should fight the good fight as long as you can. And I was also reminded not to be frustrated the other day because I was at a Crime Stoppers memorial for the crime victims, and I looked down and saw a picture of a very young boy. He was 11, and he was killed by somebody out on a bond for capital murder. He committed another capital murder on bond for a capital murder. And I thought that he looks very, very familiar. And I realized it was my case. And I've gotten the conviction affirmed on one of the guys, and we're still waiting on the other one. But it is good to feel like you make a difference. Getting that $2,000 from that lawyer that yelled at you on the phone, it just doesn't give you the same feeling. So let me tell you a little bit about myself and 2 basic reasons why you need to vote for me and I need to be your nominee. I'm the most qualified for this position, and I have the greatest track record of being an actual, real-world, conservative, law and order Republican. I mean, I have done it for the last 10 years. There's no question. What I think about things, my legal opinions, they're on the internet. I have been lead counsel for the state in 107 cases. I've argued 4 times in front of the state's highest court. I have helped set precedent under the 4th Amendment, the 6th Amendment Confrontation Clause, the 8th Amendment Excessive Bail. Under the rules of evidence, the leading case right now on the admissibility of DNA in sexual assault cases is a case that I handled. I reversed the 14th Court of Appeals because they didn't follow the law, and now a serial rapist is in prison and he'll be there for a very, very long time. But if you know, it was 9-0. It wasn't a close case, and it should not have been. Another case I set precedent on was on the issue of bail, was a gentleman named William Solomon Lewis, who I think I filed my first thing involving Mr. Lewis in 2020, and I had the last filing on him in 2025 for some reason. So he was in my life for 5 years. There are people that meet their significant other, fall in love, get married in less time. So it started out, Mr. Lewis was 10 years ago, it's been more than 10 years ago now, it was 10 years ago at the time of the offense, 15 years ago in 2010, he was out on an appellate bond for $190,000. And he had been found guilty of retaliation, which is where you threaten a law enforcement officer. I'm going to kill you for doing your job as a cop. He was right in his face and he told him that. And he's found guilty. Then he gets out on a bond, and the bond was revoked because he was pulled over for a traffic stop. He was found with a list of names, which included the names of the prosecutors, the cops. The trial judge himself, who had granted the appellate bond, was on the list, as was his home address, which just goes to show you no good deed ever goes unpunished. But also, and he had a sawed-off shotgun. So the feds took the case, put him in federal prison. He starts getting out in 2018, and he starts harassing his mother. And he gets thrown in jail for that. He couldn't get he probably would have gotten a PR bond for that, but he had a federal hold on him for a parole violation. And so he's stuck in there. He says on a jail call, I'm going to kill her. He called her another name. And as soon as I got here, she's going to be dead. And he was trying to get her to not testify against him. And they found him. He was found guilty again of retaliation. It goes up. I did the case. And then the intermediate court, but get this, the trial judge, over my explicit objection, gave him $120,000. So here we are 10 years later, more bad behavior, a prison trip, a new conviction, and his bond, and 10 years of inflation, and his bond goes down. The stuff you heard from Mr. Garza is not hyperbole. I mean, there are hyperbole narratives in the media. The stuff about that is not. It is real. I see it all the time. And it happened in Mr. Lewis's case. Then the intermediate court reversed his conviction. I think incorrectly, but they reversed it. He's entitled to a bond while the case pens, but it's not any bond he wants. They just and by the way, his bond was then revoked because there was an election and the old judge was not asked back again. And the new judge did the right thing. He was violating his bond. He goes to prison. Or he gets put in jail. Then the intermediate court just reinstated the bond he'd already screwed up. He got out. I took the case to the Court of Criminal Appeals and said, this is ridiculous. He needs to go back in jail. But I only had one thing on my side, the text of the statute, which is good, and the 1913 case. And I wrote that thing and filed it, and I thought, there's very little hope of this. And then one day my phone goes off, and I see a notification, and they threw him back in jail. The problem was, he also saw that order, cut his ankle monitor off, skedaddled, and for 5 months, no one knew where he was. So the history of retaliation, he didn't like me very much at this point. And so I had to go everywhere with a loaded gun. I had a dog that was very sick at the time. I had to take him out multiple times late at night when it was dark. And, this man was intelligent. He could find where people lived. And so my ability to understand what it means to not have faith in the judgment of judges went from sympathy, which it had always been as a prosecutor, to empathy. I understood what it was like to look out and in at the court system and lose respect for what has happened. And by the way, the opinion of the Court of Criminal Appeals was wonderful. It said it is obvious his bond is insufficient, and indeed it was. Anyway, he is now back in prison. So that one turned out okay. He didn't harm anyone, thankfully, but we were very much afraid that he would. And so I set a precedent. But it also shows you that I've been doing this now for a decade, and I've been doing appellate work for 8 of those years. The only people in this county who have probably filed more briefs than me are the other prosecutors in the DA's office who've been there longer doing this work. Other governmental entities like that too. The PD's office, they file a lot of briefs. We do the most amount of the work. It's what I do all day, every day. I sit in a room, I read the record, I look for issues, I address what's on in the opening brief, and I write a brief about it. That's what my job would be on the Court of Appeals. And I want to just take a moment to compare myself with the other candidates. So I've been fortunate in this race. There hasn't been anything, like personal mudslinging. I mean, the things I've seen recently are just amazing. For some very low-level races, might I add. But I do want to compare and contrast myself, because one of the things I've noticed is that we have an SREC in the room. We have some precinct chairs here. And I see Republican voters and primary voters have gotten very annoyed because they're tired of hearing from candidates. It's all monochrome. Everybody is either, depending on what you're running for, they're the most qualified, they're the most conservative, they're the most this, they're the most that. And they frequently are not. I mean, politics is full of good, sincere people. It's full of posers. It's full of people they've paid a lot of consultants to help them manufacture nonsense, or I don't want to say nonsense, hype. So let me just compare myself. So I am 40 years old, by the way. I've been lead counsel on 100 cases. I have 3 opponents. One of them is 15 years old. No, he's 24 years older than me. He's handled 10 appeals in the state of Texas. That's it. So whenever Rolando was saying I have more experience, it isn't just that I handle more criminal stuff. I practiced in front of the Court of Appeals all day, every day. Sitting in a room, reading a record is just what I do. The other one is, when I first started, I think he was attached to 14. He's gone out and found some stuff to put his name on, so now his bar card pulls up 18. He's 15 years older than I am. And then the third one, I agree. It's like Bigfoot decided to run from the Court of Appeals. No one really ever sees it. But I say this because I don't ever attack people. If they were running for other courts for which they were qualified, more qualified than me, I'd say, fine, you can have it. I am not doing this because I want the title judge by my name for its own sake. I'm doing it because I think I'm the best person in the race, and the more I get to know my opponents, the more I think that. The other thing I will point out, too, is that we all say that we're the most qualified, and that's the problem. I'll get up and say, I'm the most qualified. I have countless numbers of appeals, one of them says. Normally, countless means it's so many you don't want to quantify. I think in this case it's so small you don't want to quantify. Also, in terms of electoral history, the last 2 courts of appeal cycles have been very good for the Republicans because we've stopped the bleeding in Harris County, and we're doing well in the other counties, so it puts us over the hump. The last time we had competitive races in the courts of appeals district was 2020. In fact, the two justices I'm running against, Jessica Carey, she's a de facto nominee. She's the only one in her primary for them, and she's my boss, so it's very nice to have her here. But I forgot to call her out. Here's Jessica Carey, everybody. Thank you for coming. She's really candid. Lost my train of thought. We're running against people. There were 2 Democrats that slipped across like a couple thousand votes on the first court, and then in the 14th court, the 2 Republicans sweeped across and barely won. One of the Republicans over there, it was Chief Justice Christopher, the current chief. Out of 2.2 million votes cast, she won by 1,000 votes. So in 2022, when I was a judicial candidate on the ballot, to give you a baseline here, Greg Abbott got 44% of the vote in Harris County. He got 490,000 votes. I went around doing what Rolando talked about my experience, talking about things that mattered to me. I got 521,000 votes, and I got 49.32% of the vote, and I was 14,000 votes away from winning out of over 1 million cast. 2 of the other people, not the third one that no one knows about, 2 of the other people, the third one, her bar card number pulls up, it's in the teens, I think it's like 15 or 16 cases. So she also has no appellate experience that I can find of. And I cannot find any place online before this campaign begins where they held themselves out as appellate specialists. All right, we'll clear that. Anyway, one of the other candidates was also on that ballot, Mr. Whitaker. He got 511,000 votes. So we're on the same ballot, and he clocks in 10,000 votes less than I did. The other one, Mr. Frankfurt, got 507,000 votes. You're looking at people that are not exactly political overachievers, and the margins of the more votes I got versus them, that is the difference of those two courts of appeals races in 2014. If these elections are close, we need people that can pull every vote out of Harris County possible. We might not get to 50, but we need to get as close as possible because it's such a big population. And so I will move on. I have nothing but respect for my colleagues, but I do want to go into the differences between us because when I get up at these events and say, I'm the most qualified, there's a little bit of detail behind that. And also, as for the reason why I'm a real law and order Republican, when people talk about law enforcement, when I say that, some people say, well, you're not running to be a DA, you're not running to be a cop, you're running to be a judge. And that's true. Judges are neutral. We call balls and strikes between the parties. But the law enforcement process, this is true even on the civil side, is like a chain. You need the police start the chain. But in order to go all the way to imposing consequences on a legal wrong, you have to have a judicial system that is willing to do it and follow the law. There are times where enforcing the law means that the state loses. The evidence has to be suppressed. But it's determined on what the law is. I've written about this. I believe that we judges should not only follow the law, they should follow the text of the law, and they should respect what our Constitution actually says. Because, you know, there are things where we have been, we've made changes as a country, but our founding fathers were very, very wise people. And they understood that there is a balance between the need for the government to govern, as I think it was John Adams said, men are not angels. And human nature can corrupt those governing, and it can corrupt those being governed. And so, in some areas, there are absolute prohibitions. You get a trial by jury, period, free speech, period. In the criminal justice area, there are areas where they accommodate the two things. You do not have a right to be free from all searches and seizures, only unreasonable ones. You're not entitled to be out on bail whenever you want to, only if it's excessive. That was their wisdom. And it was wrong for the judges to stop following that anyway, just because of their judicial oath, but also because the local Harris County judiciary was not smarter than the founding fathers, after all. Let me just close with this. I said when I had my doubts, but I decided to stay here. A couple of years ago, I was offered a staff attorney position in a court of appeals, which I am fully qualified to do. And my opponents would get an interview. I turned it down to stay here because I wanted to make a difference. And I see that having judges who put their hand on the Bible and the Constitution and swear an oath to follow the law must really mean it. And I mean, with me, I would not take an oath and not follow it. I would one day stand before a much higher court that is maybe more merciful, but certainly very accurate and always knows what you did. So I would never do such a thing. I have been, for people that care about endorsements, I've been endorsed by HPOU, been endorsed by HPD's Organization of Spanish-Speaking Officers. I've been endorsed by the True Texas Project. I've been endorsed by my friend Rolando Garcia. I've been endorsed by the last two presidents of the Texas Asian Republican Club. So I have been backed by people that are grassroots. I've been backed by law enforcement. And I have the experience and the will to take this message to the people and do everything I can to win in November. I need your help, obviously. And so just some basic housekeeping stuff. If anybody here wants to donate by credit card, the QR code on their program is what does that, and the checks are taken up there. Finally, I would like to thank all of y'all for being here, and also my family. Some people in politics love to, some of it's because they're very proud of them, use their family as political props and do pictures. That's not me. There are a lot of people in prison that don't like me very much. And they will get out, don't worry. And also, the Lewis case taught me a lesson, because when I heard he got out or he cut his ankle monitor off, I Googled myself and I saw that in 2022 I had put in a bio about myself, you know, the consultant classes always want you to humanize yourself. So, okay, I'll put where I go to church. Well, the first thing that happens when I Google myself in 2024 is where I go to church. And so I was like, okay, yeah, that's probably a good idea. So I thank everybody who's supported me, who's encouraged me. Running for office is very, very tough, but I appreciate you all being here, and I thank you for your support. And so I ask you to vote for me, and I ask you to tell everybody to vote for me, and with that, one on. Good night. Thank you all very much.